But it was a very interesting change for me because I entered a new field and I started to use all these tools from physics. This is a relevant things in terms of our discussion about the power law, because basically the idea is, I'm using all these tools from physics to understand Bitcoin, but I had experience already on how powerful these can be, because physics is really a way of thinking about the world from first principles. In fact, in one of my slides, I have I can maybe even share the slides. I have a slide about what Elon Musk says. This one, share. So he says, I tend to approach things from a physics framework, and physics teaches you to reason from first principle rather than by analogy. And this is so important. Right? When I saw this sentence, why I put it in my deck, because it's a way of thinking about the universe, right? So in physics, we look at the analogy. We still look for analogies because it's this idea of universality. We look at different things. There is a particular way that we look at phenomena in physics that is, so this book, actually, I suggest everybody to read this book. It's called Scale. It's a book that actually will open your eyes about one of the most important things that we are interested in physics, right? In physics, particularly, for example, when I was in astrophysics, we deal with a range of phenomena that cover a huge spectrum of what we call scales. What do we mean for scale? Scale is when you look at something and you look at how this phenomena changes in big, huge amount. Like, for example, if you have an atom, you're looking at an atom, and the atom is, the size of an atom is 10 to the minus 10. So 1/10 of a billion of a meter, right? And then you go to things that are like molecules. So you go a factor of 10 up. Then you're looking at grouping of molecules. And maybe you go another scale of 10, right? So then you go to things that you can see with your eye. So we're talking about, from millimeters and centimeters, study and revisit topics that maybe you put aside or you didn't find interesting when you grew up, right? And now, like in my case, for example, I never dealt with economics or, concept in economy. And I started to revisit this topic because I wanted to understand Bitcoin. And I found it interesting, fascinating, right? Because now you're more mature, but then you see the connection with Bitcoin, that is something that all Bitcoiners are very fascinated, right? It's not fascinating simply because we want to make money with Bitcoin, but because we recognize it as a revolutionary idea, right? So we go deeper, we are trying to understand it, etc. And so what I'm trying to do with my studies and my work on this idea of a power law is to give a framework, exactly like we show in the first slide. It's bringing this framework from physics to understand the phenomenon of Bitcoin. And in one of the most important framework that we have in physics, we have a different, but I would say it's a central one in physics because it's a unifying way of looking at the universe, right? So if we go back to the book, it says, eventually I will write a book like this. It's called The Physics of Bitcoin, where I show the relevance of this scaling thinking and framework to understand Bitcoin. But my work is basically, the essence of my work is this. Once you have this tool to understand the universe around you, you will be able to understand a lot of things that maybe you didn't understand before. And like I say, how do we bring up the scale when we're looking at phenomena? We use the log because, as I was explaining before, just to give a kind of a refresher of what the log is. So one way, when you're talking about a phenomena like Bitcoin, right, when we can see the relevance of the other scaling phenomena. In fact, actually, before talking about Bitcoin, let's look at some of these scaling phenomena where power laws show up. Like, for example, one of these is this one, right? This one has to do with planets. So in this case, we are showing, I'll try to make it a little bit bigger, but maybe you can see it. So with planets, what we see here is the log of a 6F4 doesn't seem big. So the reason why we do that is because many phenomena, when looked at from a scale point of view, seems to have some kind of organization. And for example, look at this graph with the planets, right? If I draw them in this way, where I take the log, so that gives me basically the scale, then it looks like a straight line. And what it means, this is actually, it's simple to show. If anybody has a little bit of knowledge of algebra, you will be able to show it yourself. I show this in one of my videos on a certain point in the book, and there will be some pages where I show how to do it, but I need also to make some classes probably about that. But it's relatively simple to show that if you have a power law. So a power law, just to simplify, it's something that looks like this, where you have y, so the quantity y, or there is this straight line, right? It means there is some kind of simple relationship, a linear proportionality. So it makes actually this equation simpler, because the equation that we just showed, it says, well, forget about this complicated equation that says there is some kind of a power. If you take the log of y and you take the log of x, now this relationship becomes simply a straight line. A straight line means there is a direct linear relationship between the scale, not the quantity itself, but the log of the quantity, so the scale, between one quantity and the other, the scale of one quantity versus another. And a straight line is one of the simplest possible relationship between two things. And so it says, as you change the scale of how long it takes a planet to go around the sun, you need to change also the scale of the orbit. And that change is not random, it's organized. Product of the masses of the two objects, the sun and the planet, then you can show mathematically with, he wrote an entire book that was like big like this, but he had to introduce a lot of concept, and he didn't use modern mathematics. But with modern mathematics, you can write literally 3 or 4 lines, and you show that if you start with gravity, you get this relationship. And the relationship is the distance is proportional to the period to 2/3. So it's amazing, that actually the history of science that gave us technology, all the things, including the computer we are using, started actually with a power law. These tells you how important these power laws are in understanding the universe. One time I found this shirt that says, it's a kind of an internal joke. I went to a physics conference. All what I got was planets applied to biology. When we had our interview, I mentioned this power law that is between the size of an animal and the much energy an animal uses. But they come up in things like languages. Like if you have, for example, this is called the zip flow. You see how this exactly when physicists use universal things that seem not to have anything common, like the motion of a planet, and languages have something in common with this power law organization. In this case, you get a power law if you take the most used word in a language, right? In English, I think is THEV, and you rank it first, right? Because it's the most used. Then you look at the second word, okay? You look at whatever that is, and then you find out how many times is used, right? In a language, you take a sample text, etc. It's all probabilistic. So kind of mechanism that underlines the law. But it's never 100%. It doesn't mean that it's written in stone. Even the planets, right? Even how planets move, as far as we know, it's just very likely that we are going to find this, continue to follow this pattern, but we never can say in science anything is 100%. As you move from planets to metabolism, notice how the dots are much more noisy, right? They don't follow perfectly the straight line because metabolism and physiology in general is much more complicated than how the planets move, right? And when you go to language, there is even more noise and so on, right? So you're going to get fuzziness, right? So this fuzziness means it's not perfect, but you can see the general trend is there. It's a power law. It's a scaling principle. It means as you scale the size of a city, the area with this graph, right? So we are showing 3 panels. The lower one is the price versus the time, right? We are taking the log of the price versus the log of time. This is the more familiar power law that people have seen before. And like I say, the slope here is 571, right? Something close to 6. Now, as a scientist, you are asking yourself where that number comes from. What is due to? Has to be some kind of cause that is producing this behavior, right? So, I already discovered these power laws in the past, but I didn't put them together in a coherent picture. In fact, this one with the addresses, I discovered all the way to 2012. And what it's telling us, right, in this case, we are having addresses.
Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Support the channel by liking this video, subscribing, and enabling post notifications for more content on crypto and digital assets. Check out our other videos and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your engagement helps with the YouTube algorithm and keeps the content coming. Thanks for your support. Enjoy the video.